Well, China's hoping that trade talks with Washington can defuse these growing tensions. Beijing has entrusted Vice Premier Liu He to bring things back from the brink, I should say. President Trump has said there is, in fact, no trade war, tweeting that the battle was, in fact, lost years ago, quote, by the foolish or incompetent people who represented the US. Lowy Institute Senior Fellow Richard McGregor joins us now, along with our very own Bloomberg Gadfly columnist David Fickling, for a chat. Richard, just going off this latest tweet, how much of it has been unfair treatment by China? How much of it is just the nature of the Chinese economy developing and the structural changes over time?
Well, it's a number of things. It's the nature of the US economy, low savings, China high savings, all the sort of macro economic factors. But there's no doubt that the US has legitimate gripes against China, most on forced technology transfer, IP theft, market access, all sorts of things like that. So there's a legitimate issue there. Whether Mr. Trump is going about it in the right way is another question altogether. I mean, he's right in one sense. There's no trade war right now. We're kind of at a trade tussle at the moment. Was it all lost years ago? Not necessarily. Nobody really knew how China would develop, and nobody knew China would be so successful.
Yeah, well, there is an element of that, right, particularly as they're now trying to go for where it would hurt Beijing the most on technology, on the Made in China project. Is that fair in the sense that it's almost an ideological fight of the US trying to curtail China's global ambitions?
Well, it is and it isn't. Obviously, they're competing with each other, but it depends whether you're competing fairly. And there's, China doesn't have, sorry, the US doesn't have the same access to Chinese markets on technology. I mean, you can look at cloud computing, that's an obvious one. Look at internet, for example, that China would have in the US. Now, I'm not saying it's a one-way street, that there's not unfairness on both sides, but, China is a much more closed economy than the US was. The US once didn't care so much about that, but now that China has caught up so quickly, so greatly, that it is a genuine sort of geostrategic threat to it. So I think, it's finally coming to a boil in the US.